I cannot speak too good in your language, so I will continue in English. I came from Poland, as I said. I represent SQA Days-23 Polish testing board. This is an association for software testers. And by the way, I represent also IREC community. IREC is a standard, is a certification for requirements engineers. So, just shortly, I am merging two worlds, software quality with requirements engineering. What I would like to talk with you is a little bit about testing strategy. So, how we would like to start. First, let's think or discussing shortly about strategy and planning. Do we really need it? Then, what is test strategy about? Have you heard this term, test strategy? Okay. I would like to repeat this term and to clarify about this term because there is a lot of confusion about this. So first we will define what exactly is a test strategy. Then I would like to try to build with you a kind of assumptions for a test strategy. This is why you were provided with these papers. We will just use a sample application to create a basis, a very, very draft of test strategy. And then we will try to summarize, to give you some overview how to start with creating the strategy. So, first thing, planning, strategy, planning. For sure you heard these words, plan, strategy, schedules, timelines. It sounds horrible, right? Do we really need it? In projects, you know, we are turning all IT world is turning into agile, right? So, is it still valid in agile environments? Planning, strategies, something like that?
It would be much worse without.
Yeah. Okay. So it could work together. It could or it should. Should we plan or can we just deal with things in a dynamic way? Do we need planning for traditional projects? Do we need planning for agile project? What is it? We say we do. Imagine if there is no planning. Even if you're agile project lead, you are agile, you have a product backlog, you are working with requirements and things on the daily basis, you still need some amount of planning. If you are working on an agile project and someone is telling you, we are agile, we do not plan, sorry, it's not going to work. So we need a bit of planning. Otherwise, we are not able to say if we are going into the right direction. Why do we need this planning? For sure you know this much. If you want to achieve something that will be very valuable, something that makes sense, you need to know where are you going. If you want to know where are you going, you need to have a plan. If you have a plan, you need to have a strategy to be able to, realize this plan, to make it the plan, turn the plan into reality. So that is why we actually need a little bit of planning. And my idea of this workshop, of this tutorial, is to show you a draft assumptions for establishing your plans, for establishing your strategy. Why? Just because we don't want to end in this way. So, a few words about building test strategy. First of all, this is a definition taken from ISTQB. Perhaps you know this certificate. And according to ISTQB, test strategy is something on the organizational or program level. This is something that will show your approach to testing. Do not confuse it with test plan. Test plan is something different. Test plan is a little bit like a project plan, where test strategy is on higher level. Why am I talking about test strategy? Because in most projects that I was working in, we have a problem that we were just asked to start testing, without any preparation, without any idea behind, without any approach, just go and test. And what do you think? Was it working? Besides that, the problem is that without this test strategy, we are not able to, for example, answer a question, are we covering or
needs more testing. Are we using tool support in people? Or do we even have tool support? Because there was no plan behind it. So, if you are starting your test efforts on the project level, on the organization level, I would say that this is the first step. Think about how you are going to proceed with testing. How your organization should be. How to create it. I propose something like this. This is a kind of basic elements of the test strategy. What we should include? Context, business context. So all projects or activities that we are doing are embedded in some kind of context. And we need to understand this context to be able to plan our work properly. What else do we need to know? Goals. What is your goal as a tester? What do you want to achieve? And believe me, our goal is not to click. Our goal is not to test just us. Our goal is to provide some kind of information. And this is the question about what kind of information, what kind of result are you going to achieve. What else? If you notice the goals, what about the scope? What are you going to test? How are you going to test? So what kind of activities do you need? What kind of work products are you going to deliver? Then you need to establish or think about additional activities that are not pure testing, but are related with testing. Just an example, requirements engineering. It is very difficult to test anything if you do not have requirements. Or you have requirements, but of level or on the very low level of quality. What else? Traceability requirements. So traceability, have you heard about this term? Traceability, tracing, relationships. Yeah? This is a mechanism allowing you to, for example, check if your test coverage is enough. And this is not something that is just introduced or established by default. This is something that you need to define. And this is an element of your test strategy. Okay. What else? If you have this information, you can try to combine them together and create a basis for your test strategy. First thing, context analysis. Let's imagine you are working in an IT company and you need to prepare a test strategy for the products that you are going to test. What you need to consider? You need to consider stakeholders, testing stakeholders. Who can be a testing stakeholder? Can you give me an example? Test lead, okay. Who else? Customer, business stakeholder, end users, exactly. Product owner, your PM if you have a project manager. These are stakeholders, these are people that are using your testing outputs, for example, to make decisions to proceed with projects. And what do they have in common with us? Well, a lot, actually, because we are doing some activities, we are providing information to them, they're supposed to use this information. And how they are going to use this information is very, very dependent on the quality of the information that you are providing. For example, if you are telling your project manager, I found 10 bugs. Congratulations. What is the value of this information? 0. No value. 10 bugs. What does it mean? Nothing actually.
Somebody is measured by the quantity of bugs. So 10 is better than 5.
Depending on the, for example, severity of this bug. So this is about the quality of information that you are providing. It may be a very good quality of information. It may be information that is just useless. It may be also information that is confusing people. And this is an element of a strategy. You need to understand who are you communicating to, who are you reporting to let's say, elicit the requirements of the stakeholders. How to do it? You can just ask your PM or your lead or your customer what kind of from you. Example of such information, I would need a summary of defects by severity found in the calendar. I would need an information about requirements coverage. I would need information about risks covered by the testing. This is an example of requirements coming from stakeholders. But to know it, you need to ask. What else? You need to understand the processes and the areas that are depending or relevant related to testing. For example, what is the already mentioned requirements engineering? For example, release planning. For example, project management. This is all dependent testing actually. In other words, testing is not done in isolation. So I cannot plan my depending on the, for example, severity of this bugs. So this is about the quality of information that you are providing. It may be a very good quality of information. It may be information that is just useless. It may be also information that is confusing people. And this is the element of the strategy. You need to understand who are you communicating to, who are you reporting to let's say, elicit the requirements of the stakeholders. How to do it? You can just ask your PM or your lead or your customer what kind of information would you need from you. Example of such information, I would need a summary of defects by severity found in the current build. I would need an information about requirements coverage. I would need information about risks covered by the testing. This is an example of requirements coming from stakeholders. But to know it, you need to ask. Okay. What else? You need to understand the processes and the areas that are depending or relevant related to testing. For example, what I already mentioned, requirements engineering. For example, release planning. For example, project management. This is all impacting testing. In other words, testing is not done in isolation. So I cannot plan my things and forget that these things are embedded in the project. It is not going to work. So this is also something that is related to stakeholders. I need to understand what kind of processes are related with testing, and I need to work with the people in charge of these processes. Like sit with development and work on the process with them. Sit with release manager or product owner and talk with them. What else do we need to understand? The methodology, or method, or framework, however you will call it, that is performed in your organization. We are doing testing in a slightly different way in waterfall model, in agile models, in V model, or rational unified process. If you would like to plan your strategy, you need to understand the method that you are going to follow. And the last thing here, tools. Tools, method, techniques. Here, this is a very important element of the test strategy. What kind of techniques, what kind of approaches, what kind of tools are you going to use and how? Just an example, in many projects these days, Jira and Confluence are used. And these are examples of tools that can support testing. Another example of tool for performance testing, JMeter. A tool supporting specific activities. So this is the first thing. You need to understand the context, both technical and business context. Then, you need to think about goal. What is your goal as a tester? And sometimes when we are talking with people who are not very familiar with testing, what is their opinion about our goals? Their answer is to find bugs. Yes, one of the goals of testers are finding bugs. But this is not the only goal, right? What other goals can we have? Provide quality. Provide right information in right time. Yes, and this is the very important value and goal of testing, provide information. One comment related to the providing quality. Sorry guys, forget about this. Testers are not providing quality. We are providing information about quality. But sorry to say we are not able to deliver the quality because we are not developing the product. Yeah. So we can of course state that this product is compliant with requirements or not. Yeah. And this is the very important value from testing. Okay. Another things, another considerations here. What do we test? What? And this can be seen as an obvious question with obvious answer. We test applications, right? Software systems. But not only software systems. We can also test documentation. Reviews and documentation reviews. This is also about testing. So please don't forget about the very important fact that tester should not focus only on the software. Because the software is built based on requirements. And to be able to ensure the quality, you need to test the requirements too.
As well as you have to test requirements first.
Exactly.
First, and then software.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Well, actually,
provide difficulties in future.
yeah, we need to test requirements first. We need to start our activities from requirements, from the business concept, from the ideas. Yeah? Why? Because the sooner we found any problems with requirements, the sooner we can fix it and work on a stable basis. Okay. Another question, why do we test? Because we are paid for it, okay, fine. Of course. Why do we test? Because we want to make our customers happy. Because we want to provide a good product. Because we want to ensure and to provide a kind of guarantee that the product is tested and works in given conditions. Because we want to ensure that, for example, legal requirements are covered. This is why do we want to test. What do we want to achieve? Coverage, requirements coverage, risk coverage, a kind of confidence for product. These are examples of this what? How do we want to achieve it? And this is the question about activities actually, about your processes. How are you going to turn these goals into reality? How do you want to check if you achieved your goals? So this is a question about a thing called, for example, performance measures, KPIs. It sounds horrible, right? But you need a kind of metric, a kind of indicator that will show you if you actually achieve your goals. Okay. And another question, the last one here, but I personally think that one of the most important, are you planning to improve yourself and your processes, and how? And this is something that, for me, it is a subject of, well, not enough interesting projects, because in most projects that I am participating in, we are just testing without any, thinking about the quality, without any thinking about the processes. What we should do to improve our maturity, at some point of time, we just need to stop and ask a question: are we doing it in the correct way? If we are not doing things in correct way, then stop doing it. It sounds very easy, but taking into account the project situations, it might be very difficult. So inside your test approach, you need to include activities for test improvement, like lessons learned, like retrospective meetings. These are an example of such improvement activities. Okay. And now, a little bit about the activities. How can I know what kind of approach should I or can I implement in my project? I can, of course, establish it from scratch, and I can look into literature or existing sources and look for some inspiration. Here are some examples. ISTQB syllabus will provide you with some basis activities, testing activities. You can use them. You can use it as a guidance. I am not saying that you need to use it. No. It's not working in every case. But it is a good basis for establishing your own process. Like planning, monitoring. These are things that needs to be implemented. What kind of plan do you have? How are you going to monitor this plan? This is a very generic activity, right? Test analysis and design. So this is about creating test cases. Again, very generic activity that you need to establish in your plan, and so on and so on. If you would like to add some more activities providing you with maturity of the process, you can look into TMMI. Perhaps you've heard about this model. This is a test maturity model. Very useful, I would say. It sounds horrible because, wow, maturity model. But it's nothing horrible, nothing difficult. This is just a sample, very generic information of how you should implement your process to ensure that the maturity of your organization, of your test organization is growing. You can also look in ISO standard, which also provides a kind of guidance about test activities and test processes. These are just a sample solutions for providing you a kind of input information for your test approach. So this is not like you need to invent everything from scratch. There are a lot of sources that you can just use and customize for your projects and your products. Okay. So that's about activities. Now, in scope of your test approach, you need to think about work products, artifacts, or deliverables, however you call it. So, what kind of documentation, what kind of information you are going to produce? Like test strategy itself is an artifact. It can be a document, it can be a Word document, it can be a mind map, whatever. Yeah. Test plan, schedule, resource allocation, this is also a document. If you are in charge of project leading, I mean testing effort leading, you need to have a plan. What else? Risk analysis. If you know the concept of risk-based testing, there is something like a risk analysis performed, and this is documented. This is just a kind of documentation in the scope of the testing. What else? The documentation of the tests, like test cases, test scenarios, test scripts, however you call it. These are things that need to be designed. Just very simple example. For sure you know this term, test case or test scenario. It is written in a specific form, right? Like a precondition, postcondition, some steps to perform. This is a template. And when working on the test strategy, you need to define this template. Otherwise, you will have a situation that, for example, you two are my testers, and you are writing the same information in a totally different way. And you may say, okay, what's the problem? Yeah, the information is still there. The problem is that when we have different documentation forms, different templates, it's very difficult to read it and understand it. This is not comparable. And in addition, if I would involve one more tester to this team, she would have a problem of understanding your approach of working because there is no standard. So this is something that you as a test managers, test leads, or however you will call yourself, you need to design. Okay. Just a sample implementation of management artifacts. This is, let's say, a merge of ISTQB artifacts with TMMI artifacts, and it is showing what kind of documentation you can have on the management level. At the very beginning, at the top, on the organizational level, we have something like a test policy. Again, sounds horrible, test policy, wow. It is just a statement of your mission. What are you going to achieve as a testing organization? It is very comparable to the quality policy. Implementation of this test policy is test strategy. This is what are we going to talk about, test strategy. This is, again, organizational level. When you are starting a new project, then we are talking about test plans. Okay, so this is a kind of implementation of test strategy for a specific project. Much more detailed with exact information, like on the specific project we will have 5 testers with this kind of skills, we will test this set of requirements. Yeah, so this is a detailed test strategy. And when we will put everything together, activities and work products, we can go or end with this process. At the very beginning, we need to plan the tests for a specific project. The output of this activity is test plan, our project plan. Then, based on the assumption of this plan, we need to create the test design. So, using the tools, techniques, approach defined here, we are creating test cases, test scenarios, test scripts, which are defined in these artifacts. Very important information, everything must work together. So this plan will explain my approach to test. This plan will cover, for example, test levels, will cover test techniques, which are used to create this. When I have the test design specification, I can go to the test execution. And here, what is also missing in many projects, before I start test execution, before I start testing, I need to have some information what actually is going to be tested. So I need something that is called here test item transmitter report, shortly release notes. Just a short information, which requirements, which bugs are bug fixes, are delivered in the current release, so that you are not wasting your time trying to test things that are not there. Release notes. When I have it, I can execute tests, and I can report my test execution results. How? As bug reports, defect reports, for example in Bugzilla, Jira, or whatever. Yeah. And I need information about test results themselves, the test log. So which test cases were done, which test cases passed, which test cases not passed, which test cases are blocked. This is done in the form of test log, which can be basically the information that you have in your test management tool. When you are clicking, for example, pass or failed button, this is recorded as a test log entry. Why do we need it? This is important for reporting. I, as a test manager, when I will ask you, please tell me how many tests have you done? What are the results of this test? It is not taken from the error. It is taken from these, ideally from the tool. Yes? So you need to establish your way of reporting test results. And based on this information and according to the test plan, you are able to report. Perhaps you know this term test summary report or just simply test report. This is a kind of summary, usually for management, for test management and project management, showing in general terms results of testing. Like how many defects in which severity were found, how many defects were fixed, how many defects are still open, how many test cases you run, how many test cases passed, how many test cases failed, how many test cases are blocked. And from the tester point of view, these things are a little bit annoying, because it's reporting and marking the passed, not passed, a lot of bureaucratic work. But from management point of view, this is necessary to know about the status of the project. And by the way, to be able to evaluate the quality of the product itself. So this is all about your test strategy. In this case, this picture will show you the activities that you need to implement and the test work products that you are going to deliver. What else? Test control. At every step here, you need to have some ways, some means for controlling your progress, to be able to say, for example, if we do not have any delays, if there is no risk that can impact the testing schedule or the delivery dates or the quality of your results. These control activities can include, for example, checking metrics like how many tests have you done comparing to the planned test amount. Like in one sprint I am going to run, 200 test cases. At the end of the sprint you run 100 test cases. Is it good? Not really. But you need to establish this measure to know that this is not good, that something is wrong. Where do we need to establish this? In the test plan. And just to remind you, the basic assumptions about your performance metrics, about your way of doing this test planning, the test control, should be stated in your test strategy. Okay. What else should be included in the test strategy? Other activities that may impact your approach, like quality management, overall quality management in your company. And this quality management activity may impact, for example, that you need to deliver a specific amount of documentation, because this is required by your quality manager and your quality management processes. And this will impact your testing activities. Just to be very clear, quality management, it's not the same as test management. It's not the same level of area of interest. Quality management is much broader. Testing is just a part of it. Okay. What else do you need to include? Risk management. How are you going to deal with the risk? And of course you may say, this is not for us, this is for project managers. Yes, it is. It is for project managers, but you, as a test manager, you are a kind of project manager responsible for a test project. So you need to know how to deal with the testing risks. So the generic processes or activities or mechanisms related with the risk management applicable for project management are also applicable for test domain. What else? Requirements management and the way of handling requirements. Are you working in agile environment?
Yes.
Okay, some of you are. So perhaps you know the concept of user story.
Yes.
User story is a kind of requirement used in agile. And working with user stories is a little bit different than working with traditional requirement specifications. So things that are not actually in scope of your domain, because requirements engineering is not your area. This can impact your approach, because you will need to establish and implement different mechanisms for handling requirements in agile than in traditional ways. What else? Release planning. And why do we need this information here? Because you need to know what are the plans for delivering release. It will impact your schedule. It will impact your scope of works. Okay, so it is not as easy that I will plan that, for example, in sprint 1 I will test this. You can wish to test this. But the reality can say that, well, in the sprint 1 you can test this, because this is delivered. Okay. So it may look like a very obvious things, but these obvious things are usually forgotten. Okay. And at the end we are ending with the situation, okay, we would like to test, but we do not know when these things to be tested are delivered, we do not know who is responsible, we do not have anything.
The worst thing,
Small joke, the worst thing is when you are testing
here,
and release is coming around here.
Yeah, exactly. So we wouldn't like this situation. This is why we need a little bit planning and coordinating of our activities with other activities. What is also, at least from my experience, missed in projects, communication management. Again, very obvious, we are communicating, right? Of course, all the time we are communicating. How, when, with who, in which form? Do you prefer Skype communication or mail communication? Do you prefer face-to-face communication or via emails or whatever? This is, again, not known by default. This is something that you need to establish. For example, if you are, just come back to this slide, if we are talking about test summary report, what would we say? What is the best way of providing test summary report to your management? How would you communicate your test summary report?
Just ask them, what do they need?
Ask them for what do they need, okay. Ask them, because they can prefer totally different forms. Like one of the management can say that he expects an Excel sheet with data. Another can say, oh, no, I don't like Excels. Please provide me a kind of Jira statistics. Another can say, I don't like Jira statistics. I need to have a graph, this great color graph with smiles or these smiles. Yeah. This is about stakeholder preferences. In this case, in communication area. Okay, this is about the communication between you and management. What about communication inside the team? Is it obvious how to communicate? Inside the team? Not obvious. Again, very obvious thing. Right? We are communicating. We are a team, we are communicating. But when we ask about details, it is not clear how to communicate. You wanted to say something? Yeah? Someone wanted to say something from here? Developers, okay. And developers are another story. Yes. Communicating with developers can be a challenging issue. Communicating with business can be a challenging issue too. Communicating inside the test team can be challenging again. For example, in my current projects, I am a test manager and I need to communicate with my Chinese QA team. Not easy. Why? A language issue. The accent, their English is not my English. Yeah? And this can happen that, well, we are talking, but we do not understand each other. And in this case, the preferred communication way is, okay, we can talk by Skype, and after that, please write an email what we discussed. This is a part of your approach. If you do not establish this way, you will have a problem later. Okay. What is also important in your test approach? Traceability and information. These things that are not really liked by IT people, because this is about papers, this is about structure, this is about all this boring stuff. But actually, this boring stuff is required to know, do we have information? Do we have documentation? When? Where do we have this information? How is it related? This can mean an answer for a simple question. Please provide me a proof that your requirements have been tested. And what is your proof? If you will tell me, yes, it was tested, great, but I need a proof. Traceability can give you this proof. I mean the relationship between requirement and test case. This is the proof that I will look for, that the customer will look for. Because with the all respect, the customer is not paying for your verbal assurance. At least not in most cases. So we need to have a kind of mechanism and tools that will provide this proof. And usually in projects at the very beginning, we are thinking that everything will work perfect. The spaces, pages, subpages, hierarchy of information. This is an example of information structure. But this is not working perfectly just by default. This needs to be defined. Like a sample strip, yeah?
And supported.
Exactly, and supported and maintained. And this is not what we like, right? Okay. How can we start planning this? Product owner or product manager role, or whoever is in charge of the business area. is usually working with business goals, business requirements, stakeholders, all the business aspect. This is, well, recorded in some form of documentation, of information. And sample relationship could be like this. We have business goals that were coming from specific stakeholders that are related to supporting some business processes. These goals can be impacted by risks. So we need a relationship here. Business goals are implemented by business requirements. These business requirements should have keyword acceptance criteria, because otherwise you are not able to state if the product delivered is okay or not. These business requirements are realized by some kind of system requirements, however you call it, use cases or whatever. These system requirements are then refined by, for example, user interface, mock-up screens, layouts, by data specification, by interface specification, and other things. Very technical, let's say, things. And here we need test cases that will test these system requirements. Of course, we can have test cases for business requirements too, no issue, no problem here. And these test cases should be connected to the specific requirement that they are covering. If we are talking about test cases at the business level, for example, acceptance, user acceptance test cases, we would need to connect them with acceptance criteria. And what else? If we are executing test cases, we can have defects. Yeah, so just simply the application may not work as designed. If we will report defect, it should be related to the relevant test case. And by the way, it is related also to a system requirements. And this will allow you to answer the question, are your requirements, for example, these requirements, implemented in correct way? Because if you have a requirement that have a defect allocated, you cannot answer it was implemented correctly, because there is a defect open for it. So this sounds very clear and very obvious, but actually this is something that you need to think about in your project. Otherwise you are not able to, for example, evaluate the coverage achieved. You are not able to prepare properly for acceptance testing and for any other form of acceptance. This is the structure for traceability. Here we can also talk about the last thing, about reporting. Reports are derived, or reports are based on the defect information, can be based on the test cases information, and of course, if we have test cases are related with system requirements and business requirements, and based on the reporting, you can state which requirements are covered, tested at which level. How can we implement this? Like that. What's that? It's Jira. It's Jira, and here you can see the traceability. This is done by links like tested by or linked to. This is for Jira. If you are working with a kind of modeling tools, this traceability information can be also implemented like a connection, visible connections, like arrows. There are many ways of implementing traceability. The important thing for you is to know what information you want to relay to what information. This is the first step, to understand what kind of input, what kind of information do you need. Okay, so if we would like to put it together and create a test strategy, the test strategy for your organization, for your product portfolio could look like this. These are general information to be put in the test strategy. This is a sample template for the test strategy. This template, is actually provided in the form of the papers that you received, some of you received. In the paper, in the exercise, your test strategy is a little bit customized. It's just easier, because this looks like a quite complex document. When you open your papers, your exercise, you will find a lighter version of the test strategy template. In any case, inside the test strategy, you should have information about what kind of standards, guidelines, methods you need to follow in your products. What kind of risks are you generally addressing? For example, in software, in a safety critical area, you need to cover safety risks. What kind of test approach are you going to implement? Like, what kind of test levels do you have? What kind of entry criteria will you have? What kind of, suspension criteria are you planning for the specific level? You need to have also a kind of information like procedures about incident management, how to manage defects, what kind of tools I use, what kind of severity classification I'm going to use. Configuration management, another thing, like version management. How are you going to indicate the versions of the test artifacts? And a little bit about test activities. Yes, so just an overall view of the test activities. And that's all. This can be written in this form, in the form of work document. This can be written in the form of mind map, works good as well. This can be written in the form of a Confluence page or a framework built in Jira. Yeah, so the form of this documentation is more or less customizable. The important thing is that you need to have this information. On the project level, this test strategy is turned into test plan. And that's the content of the test plan. I mean, in the test plan you will have a detailed schedule, detailed activity breakdown, you will have a specific test entry and exit criteria, like the total amount of open defects must not exceed some number. So here you will have an exact information based on the test strategy. And this is about the general approach to build the test strategy. Now, it may look like in the project we will need to document absolutely everything. Test scope, test approach, activities, test work products. It may look like this, but remember that all we need to establish is enough information to provide valuable feedback for stakeholders. So, Albert Einstein already said it, Agile is saying a similar thing, keep it simple. Here, you have a guideline. This is what you can have. And from this, select what you need. And implement in the best possible way on your project. If you like mind maps, fine. If you like pictures on the wall, fine. If it's working for you, why not? It doesn't matter, actually. What's matter if you all and your teams and your stakeholders know what kind of information you have, what kind of information you can provide to them. This is important. And now your turn. What I would like to ask you, how much time do we have? How much time? Okay. Okay, so we have 20 minutes to make some kind of exercise, allowing you, I hope, to understand what is the test strategy about. Now, please tell me who does not have these papers. Okay. I would like to ask you to create a kind of small groups. In each group, at least one person should have the exercises printed. So if you could please just join another people with this paper, it will allow you to make this exercise. What I would like to ask you about, just can you give it for a second? I would like to see how it's printed. Okay, on the first page, you have something like a product backlog. On the next pages, you have something like a draft structure of the test strategy. I would like you to go through this backlog and more or less based on this, create some kind of initial draft assumptions for the test strategy. And what kind of products we are going to talk about here? Looks familiar? Exactly.
Let's imagine now that you are working on the test strategy that should explain your test approach for a product, for applications like this, like an application allowing you to display information about the conference, to register at the conference, and some more features. So this is your area of interest. Now, I would like you, if you don't know this page, I believe you do, to go to this page, see what kind of features are there, because it will guide you in the further steps of the exercise. I would like you to now take 20 minutes, go through this paper, go through this page, and prepare a kind of draft assumptions for your test strategy. I mean, what kind of test levels or test types would you plan for this kind of applications? What kind of techniques would you plan for this kind of applications? Is it clear? No details, just a very draft assumptions for this kind of application. Please watch my words, not this application, this type of application. Okay? All right, so now you have 20 minutes to prepare. Display this. Okay. I think that they have the mobile. I think let them see the website if you want to. Because I was thinking that I will display the application.
general risk, like efficiency or performance of social applications. General risk. Rather to this kind of applications. And this kind of application, what is the application? This is a web-based application allowing to register users, right? Well, this kind, an example of such general risk can be usability or performance. So, general cases. Yeah. Is it information for me? Okay. 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 Yep. General principles, I mean, in a kind of diagram or at least test activities that you would see for this kind of application, like creating a test plan, like preparing test cases. Do what you can in this limited time. Okay, my dear, I think we can try to help ourselves and try to complete this exercise together. Okay? Are you ready with some information? Did you have a chance to look, to go through this application and understand the application? Yeah? Okay. Okay. First thing, I will go here. Do you understand the product backlog? Is it okay? The product backlog, is it clear, complete? It's not complete. It's not complete. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Do you know more or less what kind of behavior or features could we expect from this kind of applications? What does it do? Yeah.
High level, yes. We have a conference, we have some kind of payment system, we have some kind of personal storage with possible legal issues. We have some...
Did you notice with possible legal issues? That would be a risk that you need to address in your test strategy.
Yeah, I'm actually basing on risks we had time to determine. Also, data issues possible, so we have some kind of infrastructure. We should test infrastructure, for example, load testing, performance testing, etc. Also, yes, notifications and so on.
Okay, so this is the basic features, very general features of these applications, right? And based on this information, how would you define, how you prepare your test strategy? And what is the content of your strategy? The first thing, very important, is the content of the document. Then the chapter 1 document information. What to write in this section? Exactly. What is it? What this document? What is it about? What is it for? For what audience, for example? What scope of applications it is related to? And that's all. Second chapter is risk to be addressed. What to include here? Okay.
We need to understand the risk and try to come up with possible risks mitigations.
Okay.
And
What can you give me a sample risk related with this application? Okay, conference about quality. If the quality of the website is not good, it will impact your reputation. That's a risk, okay? Okay, we may not be ready for the first day of the conference. So the conference is now, but the website is not ready. Okay, one more question here. Okay. The team, personal issues. Yes, that's a risk. That's a project risk. We can have a perfect application, but without a proper team, we are not able to deliver the application. Okay. Integration. Actually, when we have systems that are integrating to another systems, you don't even have a risk. There will be problem for sure. But great question, great example. These are all examples of risks. And this is the first thing that you need to document in this section, a list of risks. Then, in ideal world, if you will have not 20 minutes but 2 days, you will write a kind of mitigation strategies. Like, what are your plans to avoid these risks, or at least minimize them? Yeah? And that's all. In case of these applications, this kind of application that are just the web-based systems targeted to the very broad audience, I would say that you will also have a great risk of usability, like ergonomy, like intuitiveness of the application, like the strange thing, is the website attractive? Yeah? Okay. And you need to deal with these risks. What is the next chapter? Yeah?
What kind of risk should we add to this? Because most of them are not only test risk, but project risk. I mean, for example, third-party integration, we wrote this risk too, but it is all project risk, not
Yes.
only for test.
Good point. Some of our risks.
Пожалуйста, вопросы с микрофоном. Вас не слышно ни на камере, ни переводчика. Дожидайтесь, когда микрофон принесет модератор.
Can I continue? Okay, good question. General risks. In scope of our test strategy, we can identify risks that are general, that are rather, well, project risks. Should we write them down or not? I said we should, and we should escalate to technical people, to project managers. If they will agree that yes, this is a project risk, it needs to be managed in scope of project, then we will just do not care about this risk at our level, but we will manage this risk at the project level. And you are 100% right, this kind of risk like integration risks or something like that, these are risks that can impact the whole project and are not only related with testing. Okay? This is a good input or, well, side effect of creating test strategy. When creating test strategy, you may see problems that should be escalated to others too, not only resolved by ourselves. Yeah?
Finding priority. Because, like for me as a user, it's more important to not to lose my personal data than like ergonomic issues or usability some.
Okay. Priorities or risk levels, I would say, yes?
Yeah.
Who should establish them? It's quite difficult because we would need to look at the problem from the, well, general view. So you would need to ask, in ideal world, user representative, business analyst or product owner, and together with the team, establish the risk level depending on the perceived, well, probability and impact of internet stakeholders. We are not able to define risk levels by ourselves, not in most cases. Yeah, here was a question. No more questions. Okay, let's go to the next chapter. The next chapter is general test process. What would we write here? Just a list of test activities that yeah, yeah. Exactly. No, the context there was something that you needed to establish based on the type of application. This type of application, yeah, so I would say that to test this application you will need a little bit more than 1 day. Yeah? But the exact timing and so on depends on actually the test strategy that you are preparing, because inside of your test strategy, you may want to create or perform a list of test activities. These ones listed in the chapter 3. And this is your generic test approach that on every project related with this kind of products, you will need to have test planning, test design, test case creation, test execution split in some iterations. You will have reporting. This is your general approach taken from your test objectives. Yeah? If the question if this approach is working on all projects, it depends on the project conditions actually. So in project, you will take the test strategy and you will see if this test strategy that you are working on is matching the project environments. And in specific cases, it may mean that for this project, as this application is already running, you will not run, for example, unit tests, because this is not the place for unit tests. So you will just customize this generic test strategy for a given conditions. But you are 100% right. Before creating test strategy, you will need to know more about, well, organization approach, organization context. Yeah? In this case, you need to imagine the situation a little bit. Okay, coming back to chapter 3. Here you will have just a list of test activities, like from ISTQB. What is the next chapter here? Test levels. Okay, did you manage to complete this chapter? No, okay. No way, no time, yeah, sure. What would we write here? In ideal world, we could write that on every project, we need to have unit tests done by programmers. Keyword in ideal world. Yeah? Unit tests done by programmers on development environment. Only after the unit test passed, we are going to, for example, integration testing. When it passed, we are going to functional integration testing. Then we are going to acceptance testing. This is an example of content of chapter 4. What is very important here, define the entry criteria and your entry requirements, like to be able to test, smoke tests must pass. Do you know smoke tests? Yeah. If the smoke tests are not passing, to be honest, testing is a wasting of time. Yeah? And this is something that can be written in the test strategy, and this is a kind of your requirement. Yeah?
For the smoking test, our test engineers at the test case review meetings, we will choose the very important chunk test cases for the developers. And before the developers deliver the software to our testing team, we need to let the programmer and developers to do the self-test first. and send the report of our choose test cases to us. If there's still some test cases is not passed, we will not accept the software to do the smoking test. This is our strategy of the entry scenario. And we will do the automation regress before the testing. So for example, at the beginning of the test case preparing, we will write some test scripts for the UI automation. So before the developers deliver the software to our tester, we will provide the script to them and provide the environment to them, let them to do the integration every time.
And this is an example of such your requirements.
Yes.
This is absolutely very important that you as a tester should have your requirements too. It is not working like you need to test what is delivered. No. You need to test what is testable. Okay, thank you. What is the next chapter here? Defect management. We are managing defects in Jira or Mantis. You can put a reference to the Mantis or Jira workflow. What is important in this chapter, clear indication of parameters like what is the severity or priority schema for your organization, because it is not very clear. It is not always clear. What does it mean that we have a defect severity major or blocker? The information, the requirements for specific severities can be defined here. Okay, so this is more or less how we are building test strategy. Yeah? If you would like to know more about the details, let's talk offline, yeah, because I can see I'm running out of time. Yeah? Okay. Oh, I broke something. It wasn't planned. It wasn't planned too. Okay, in any case, let's forget about the presentation. What I was about to say, just a summary at the end. What you need to remember when creating the test strategy. Goals. First of all, your goals, your contexts, your stakeholders' requirements and expectations. Then you can think about the products that you are going to test. You can think about the possibilities, including technical possibilities that you have, like this example of your colleagues. Developers can help you prepare automatic builds. Yeah? This is everything that you can include in the test strategy. What is also very important, do not document everything. It has no value. Document what is important. And to know what is important, first you need to investigate requirements. It is very similar to the job of business analyst, actually, and requirements engineering. Before you start your job, you need to collect requirements for this job. Yeah? So if you have any experience with requirements with business analysis, you can use this experience for testing. And what I would like to say at the end, remember one thing, creating test approach, working in testing is very, very team-oriented work. We cannot do it alone. I think that you already experienced this. Without the context of this application, without technical details, organizational details, we are not able to create the test strategy in a good way. As you can see, I have a very high testing skills. I just touched the application and it was broken. Okay, so and that's all from my side. I believe you will get this presentation. My email address is at the end, so if you would like to contact me, you can wait for the presentation. Thank you very much. Now, and you see, that's all about planning. We plan, and it's not working. Oh, great. What did you do? Summary? Your turn.
invitation for a conference in Poland. If you would like to visit Poland, we can communicate together very well, in English, for example. You can visit us for Test Wars conference, which is held in November in Zakopane. It is in the mountains. So if you like mountains, please feel invited. And that's all from my side. And here you can have my email. Thank you very much. Time up, I know. 10 minutes for questions.
Maybe a small comment, and you can then judge, is it right or wrong. You were talking about documentation. In agile environment, documentation can be very small, very short. For example, test report can be just one comment in the Jira ticket, and it's really for your own good to write them. So, for example, if you're investigating some kind of what was tested, why it was tested, so this kind of documentation, small, not painless. I know we don't like documentation, documenting a lot of things. It may really help. Do you agree or not? Maybe.
Depends. You know, in IT we have one common answer. It depends. And I absolutely agree. One comment may be enough. And I don't agree. One comment may be totally not adequate. How can we well answer these questions? What are you going to do with this comment? Is it only for your team, or this is something that will be also communicated to stakeholders that may not understand that comment? So this is about creating actually requirements for this communication. It may work or not. I would say I saw a lot of projects with absolutely minimum documentation, and it was working. I saw a lot of projects with such amount of documentation, and it was working because it was requested. So I would say there is no strict answer. It just depends.
I have a question. Have you ever found yourself drowning in documentation you have to produce, and why? And the second question is, have you ever faced the problem that testers might stick to the test plan so close they miss the bugs that they should explore in the project?
Okay, the second question first. If I understand you correctly, your question is about that the testers need to follow the plan, and because they need to follow the plan, they are losing the focus on the application. Yes, and actually this is a side effect or too strict planning. So I would say that is an issue for the test management to create a plans allowing some kind of freedom in testing. I would say that a good plan is a plan that can be also modified in an easy way. So if you as a manager, if you see that your testers are, not on the track anymore, you need to react. If you ask them to stick to the plan, sorry to say, but your management skills should be improved. This is the manager role. You need to know if your plan is adequate. If it's not, the plan should change. And that's all. What about the first question? Can you repeat, please? There was one more question here. What? Sorry. Drowned. Oh, have I ever drowned in documentation? I'm always doing this. No, seriously. If you can understand your needs, your project needs at the beginning, and if you have a little experience with project management and documentation, especially in Agile, it is quite easy to make a decision what is needed, what not. Yeah, so I would say it will come with experience. For the beginning, yes, I can see a lot of quite huge risk of, putting documentation over everything. But you will learn on your own mistakes, I would say. That was a question.
Thank you for the speech. I have a question about strategy representation. You said that it's possible to use mind maps and for this. It's a very fresh idea for me. Could you please give a small example? And do you have experience of such kind of strategy implementation?
Actually, I am using mind maps for some agile projects to create the test cases. I was just looking at the laptop because I thought this is my laptop and I can show you this. I cannot, but if you would like to see a test strategy in a mind map, just please drop me an email and I will send it to you. It looks like, you know how the mind map is looking? Yeah? It looks like test strategy for a project, test activities, test tools, written in the form of mind map on very general level. Now the specific parts of the, or the elements of the mind map can be linked, for example, to the pages in Jira or pages in Confluence, sorry, with detailed information. Yeah? I am using mind map but because this is very simple and clear way of presenting the strategy in an overall view. And it looks like I am preparing the mind map. People are printing it, putting on the wall, and everybody is clear. And what is our approach? So just drop me an email, I will send it to you.
Я вопрос задам на русском, чтобы люди не травмировались своим английским.
Question about business requirements.
Вы сказали о том, что очень важно тестировать бизнес-требования также, чтобы учесть все риски. И вопрос, необходимо ли это делать на стадии составления этих бизнес-требований, потому что, как правило, менеджеры могут не все риски учесть, и тогда можно что-то упустить.
Is it important to test or maybe to check business requirements while writing them? So, in order to understand all the risks.
Mm-hmm. I would say that my recommended approach is something like product owner or business analyst is writing the business requirements, following some rules, like invest criteria, for example. Then the test team is checking the requirements, and the development team. Actually, I like the idea of three amigos. I don't know if you heard about this. Three amigos means you are looking at the problem from 3 points of views: business, product owner, testing, QAs, and technical perspective, developers. And this way you are reducing the risk that the requirements will appear to be unclear or not feasible or missing some details. So I would say that in scope of my definition of ready for requirements is quality checked done by QAs. And for me, it is must have. This is nothing to be negotiable.
И как быть, если разработка приложения началась в одно время, а тестировщик пришел на проект уже спустя какое-то время? Как наладить этот процесс тестирования, чтобы учесть предыдущий опыт разработки, когда кто инвестировал и не было никаких требований, ничего?
How should we organize testing process if the developer came to the project the first and there were no software test engineer, and this one came after developer? How should we organize the process in this case?
Okay. Then you have one option actually. You have a reactive test strategies, means you have actually no impact on the quality. You are just reacting on the quality that is already implemented. The worst case that could happen. Yeah? If you are working in Agile and you are facing this situation, that means you are not working in Agile. That's not Agile, sorry. Yeah? Because the main assumption of Agile is that you have a team with QA inside, and the team is working on the product from the very beginning. And that's all.
Thanks for your speech. Do you have any cases in your previous experience when any other parts of your team doesn't want to share information that you need to do your work? For any...
Can you please repeat the beginning? I didn't hear it.
Thanks for your speech.
The most important, okay.
Do you have any solved or unsolved cases when other roles in your process doesn't want to share information that you need as input to do your work, to get things done well, for any unrational reasons like laziness, I don't know.
Okay, what to
and
do?
how you solve it?
What to do if I need information from a stakeholder and they do not want to share this information? The first question is why they do not want to share the information, because for me it is a kind of sick situation. Yeah, we are working in one team. No matter if I am customer, you are vendor, we are working in one team. We are working on one common goal. If someone is not willing to share any information, then we will have a problem here. So my first step would be understand why they have problems with sharing the information. It may result from the fact that the people are just not aware that I need this information for some reason, that I just need it for planning my work. So I would say that my next step would be to explain that, sorry guys, I would need this information because of something. I will not get this information, then we will face this kind of problems. So I would say that perhaps you may, in your case, it may work like, if it's not working, then I would escalate to the project management. It's simple. Because there is nothing more than I would say that you can do about this for yourself.
So thank you for very useful information. So my question is, maybe do you have some tips and tricks to maybe some things that we should have by default to keep our testing process, testing project, I don't know, to keep it going, and to be successful?
From my experience, I'm working a lot on agile projects now. And the one common problem that I see is that on agile project, which is maybe not very agile oriented, but you need someone who will be something like a quality assurance manager, someone who will give you guidance, who will give you process, who will give you templates and so on to be able to make sure that the team is working. So from my experience, even if you are very, very, very agile, you need to have maybe not a role, but a skill providing a kind of coaching. Because people do not know these things. Really, they do not know. And it is not fair to require creating these things from them without any preparation. So this is one of my recommendations. Another one would be, I know that it may that may sound strange, but I recommend to prepare this strategy, this overall strategy for your projects. Because when you are working on similar projects or similar products or for similar customers, you are doing actually similar things all the time. And if you do not have the generic process, you are just you may repeat or try to investigate or invent the same activities over and over again. So to make your work a little bit easier, create a template for yourself. So for me, this is the benefit of standards, this is the benefit of models, that they allow you to reusing the same things on different projects.
And my point that every person which involved in a process should have a will to be like well updated, to have a very fresh information like every day.
Yes.
To save time.
Communication, but
yeah,
communication is very closely related to team management, to team coordination. I would say that another thing, an important thing for me, even if you have a perfect process, but the process is not working in a team, then it will not work. So I would say the first thing is to change the mindset, the attitude of people, and to make make a team from individuals. And I would say that this is the most difficult thing, the part of working on IT and projects.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Здравствуйте, спасибо за доклад. Подскажите, пожалуйста, как вы относитесь к такой практике, когда во время процесса, в какой-то итерации один тестировщик не справляется с какой-то задачей, и ему в помощь дают другого тестировщика, который абсолютно не знает ничего про данную задачу. То есть насколько хороша ли такая практика? И менеджеры часто считают, что время в тестировании уменьшается в 2 раза, если 2 человека одновременно работают над одной и той же задачей. Хороша ли такая практика и как объяснить, допустим, что она неэффективна?
What do you think about practice when there is one software testing engineer who works at the project and project manager gives someone else, a software engineer, to help him, but the second person doesn't understand anything in this project? For example, maybe he's a new one, I don't understand. And what do you think about this practice? This guy says that it's not, it doesn't work. It's not good. For example, project manager tells that if there are 2 software testing engineers, they will spend half time to do their work. They will work quicker. Okay. But it's not
This
right.
is the similar situation like 9 women can, yeah, okay. It's not going to work. Yeah. First thing, the first part of the question. If you are going to introduce new team member to a team, you need to onboard this person. You need to introduce this person, I mean provide training, provide some kind of support, provide coaching. It is not working like from tomorrow you are going to work on this team. It is not going to work because she will not know the practice of the team. Who should be responsible for this? It depends. It may be PM, it may be development lead, it may be me as a quality manager. Yeah, this is the matter of, well, agreement inside your team. The second part of the question, which was like 2 people will do the same job in half time. Sometimes it is true and sometimes it can work. But in general, if you would like to try with this practice, first you need to understand dependencies between tasks. Because if you have a task that needs to be completed before another task is done, it will not work that I will give you 5 people and they will do everything in one moment. So this is the matter of understanding the scope of work and the dependencies between the work items. And actually, project managers should know this because project managers are working on schedules, right? Or the project schedules they are creating Gantt diagrams, so they should know that there are a kind of dependencies between tasks, and changing the amount of resources will not change it, actually, will not improve it.
Hello, thank you for your speech. I want to ask you about one case. Our project has grown too fast, and now we don't have a good test coverage, for example. So we don't have unit tests or good integration tests and few automation tests. So we continue to develop a lot of features, and we, in fact, don't have a lot of time for stabilizing our application. Could you give some advices what changes should be first, or what should we do in this case?
Okay, you can try to review the scope and review the priorities. If you have such scope of work, for example, the amount of requirements to be tested and not enough time, you can try to negotiate the scope. So you can try to prioritize tasks and focus on the most important or the most important crucial things first. Another thing is, if you don't have a time for documentation or detailed test preparation, you can try to document test cases for very, very critical issues and leave the rest for exploratory testing and checklists. So you can try to merge different test strategies
to minimize the effort with ensuring that you have the minimum coverage achieved.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We need to finish, you know. Okay. This one is for me. Okay. I don't know what's that. I need to choose. Who was the most active one? You look like the most active one. Congratulations. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that I helped you a little bit. And see you later.